websites and the mobile domain. I'm not doing anything there. I'm not on the net. I'm not, I'm just still printing out books after books, which probably nobody is reading, and the only time that I get any kind of feedback from the customer is when they are unable to find something in that book. So it doesn't make us feel very comfortable with where we are. It doesn't make us feel very credited or recognized. And we all see what is happening around us in the world. Like Rahul told us about all the Instagram and Snapchats and coming and going. Where are the technical writers of the world going to find themselves in a few years from now? Okay? And I felt that the role of a content strategist could truly answer this question, because it takes our core capabilities of creating content, right? Our communication skills are extremely strong, and we can build on that and go out into the world. And when you try to be a content strategist, you have to understand what is it that will take me to the world in the most effective manner. When I say world, I mean the internet, I mean the entire branding influence that a particular corporate would want to have. Okay? So with that, let's just take a look at some of the questions that may arise. Who is a content strategist? What exactly is it that they need to do now? What is it like, and is this really here to stay? If I switch from being a technical writer today to being a content strategist, is that really a move? Is that a shift? Or is it that I'm adding on skills? And if I do move to this particular field or this particular role, what is my future? How much money am I going to make? Yeah? Some other things that might bother you or might you might want to think about are like, okay, I've invested so much time into being a technical writer, into being an instruction designer. What do I need to do now to be a great content strategist in the future? We all understand that when we make the shift, it is at a more of an entry level. But we've been smart about our roles until now. So there should be nothing stopping us from being great in, just a flash of a time. But we have to understand, we have to know what it will take to get us there, right? There are already, so this is this is such an emerging role, but I can already see people who are ranting about being a content strategist. They're already unhappy with the idea. So we can take a look at that, and maybe it can be a more of an informed decision for us if we do decide to move to that. Finally, from the organizational point of view, should you go in for content strategy? Should you go in for hiring content strategists? I know that there may not be a whole lot of corporate management folks sitting here who are going to make that decision. But still, it's something that you could take back, and if you do decide to switch to this role, this is how you could actually convince your organizations to move to this field of content strategy, and you can try and convince them how we can hire a particular team of content strategists. Okay? How can that benefit the organization? So with that, we just move on to who is a content strategist. Like I said, it's an emerging role, but the focus is completely on what kind of business objectives do you have, what kind of growth do you want to see. This is from the organizational's point of view, okay? But we have to internalize. As writers, we have not been working on that part until now, because the customers are already there, the product is already there, and all we are required to do is make sure that we document how the product functions, and then the customers get it, right? That's the part that we have been working on. We haven't thought about how can we actually be the role players into incrementing the business growth. How can I be responsible for making sure that my company sells more products and more tools every single year and comes up with the required tools, because they also have to change. And that is something that a content strategist can actually feed back into the company. Okay, we'll have a little bit of answer to that later on in the slides. It still remains content creation. There is no change in that respect. We still are making content, but what we are trying to do is we are trying to align the communication part with the marketing and the business strategies. So I'm not just creating content, like I said, I'm also trying to determine what is it that will say it better to the customer. What is it that will prompt them to come back to us as a product provider and buy our products again and again. So there's a whole lot of usability aspect that comes into the picture, but the usability remains focused on the business growth. We cannot step away from that. And that's something that we all need to learn probably. A lot of us haven't really been on the business management side, but that's the part that needs to come in. So it still remains content provision, but it has to be aligned with business growth. Finally, not finally, but when you're doing the content provision, until now, we've had very set tools that we used to use. We had like templates, we had the company-wide style guides and everything to guide us. But now we have to go beyond books, we have to go beyond just creating web pages. We have to actually identify the different media through which I am going to provide content. I have to understand the nuances of each medium. I have to understand how that is going to be utilized to make the most emphatic impact in the consumer or in the readers or in my audience's mind, so that they can make their business decisions of buying our tools and products in split seconds. So it's all about how do I plan my content to be more accessible, to be more searchable, to provide the maximum amount of feedback, to enable the customers to provide feedback to us. Okay? And when all of this is done, a content strategist is also responsible for evaluating how well did we do. Usually we depend on our customer-facing engineers and teams to come and tell us that did they like what we wrote? Did they find everything in the books that we sent out or in the material that we sent out? But here that is not the case. We cannot we cannot push this responsibility on other teams. We have to evaluate because we have to constantly evolve. We have to respond to that. If today I realize that one particular page or one particular medium, if I'm providing, let's say, documentation or helpful tips are being sent on my mobile, okay? Through the interface of the mobile, there are so many things that we want our customers to do. But we realize that somewhere maybe we've not really planned the content interface properly. And maybe we are providing 3 more sentences than what was really required. So if I have provided some kind of information as a helpful tip for a particular icon or tool and it's never getting clicked, I need to understand that. I need to make sure that I am not investing energy over there anymore. I am making the content as crisp as possible, and it has to come back to the product interface designers as well. I cannot separate myself from the interface experts. I have to also understand that when something goes out, it's a complete package that's going out right now. And each particular medium through which the customers are interfacing for that particular product can have a very, very strong positive and negative impact. So we have to understand that if somebody goes to a site and does not like the site so much, they will never visit another Instagram page or a Facebook page, or never join the Facebook group that the company has, because they're so disappointed with that. And vice versa. If a customer joins a Facebook group of a particular company, they're expecting that somebody will instantly want to chat with them. They've come to that page for a reason. And if we haven't provided that particular facility, then we are failing. And then they will also be disappointed, not just by what they have seen, but what they haven't seen. They will form their negative expectations, and all of our effort goes to waste. So we have to be responsible for each and every element that we have for our branding, for our content, for our product. All the interfaces we have to cover, we have to evaluate them constantly and make sure that we are responding correctly and in time to whatever feedback we receive, whatever assessment we make. So I have we have to understand that now the tools and strategies that we have traditionally used, we have to move away from them. We're thinking about websites, we're thinking about blogs, we're thinking about videos, we're thinking about YouTube channels, we're thinking about printed publications, but much, much smaller. We have to understand that now a whole book does not need to go out, okay? But separate sections must still be covered in a comprehensive fashion, so the customers have what they need in order to be able to use the tool correctly. But at the same time, information overload, because that was the only way of reaching out to my customers earlier. That was the only way I could provide information to them earlier. Now that is not so. They're using the tool, let them have the information they need right there. Ensure that they are prevented from making mistakes at each and every point. The checks have to be in place. And those are the things that you don't need to then cover in your published documents, right? So I will not dwell more on the last point about the cross-channel and the cross-platform information, but we have to understand that there is a whole lot of technical expertise that is required to understand which operating system works in which manner, what tools work on which operating system, what kind of hardware devices might be required. For example, if you're trying to connect an Apple device with something that is a typical projector like this, you will need you will need a connector. It's a very simple example, but if you anticipate such kind of requirements on behalf of the customer, you already know what kind of devices they might have given the kind of consumer base that we have in the hardware and software market. You can anticipate it, you can prevent them from making mistakes, and you can make sure that they have what they need in order to be able to connect. It's not something that may be necessary for running your tool, but you have to understand the customer's environment, and you have to make sure that whatever information they need before setting up the tool, they have that. After they set up the tool, you should know what kind of interfaces they will be using. So make sure that the information is customized to that interface, right? So what is a content strategist? Okay, I came across this analysis by one of the content strategists in in already functional companies, and he says that it's 5 parts of information architect, 4 parts of business planning, 3 parts of media planning, 2 parts of writer, and 1 part of SEO consultant. That's how the entire, gamut gets placed. But what I want you to understand from this is identify what you already know. We already know writing. We already know information architecture. We have some idea of business growth, plans, objectives, but we may need to know more. Okay? SEO consultants and media planner, this I believe has been like, the biggest gap for us, because we've not, gone into that arena until now. But it's time to become experts there. We cannot just like, depend on our interface designers or our graphics and visual artists. We cannot afford that anymore, because unless and until I know what is possible to be done in that area, I will not be able to maximize the use of that. I will not be able to use it optimally for my product. Okay? So what does a content strategist do? Very simply put, we identify what the business needs are. We identify what kinds of members are there in our target audience. Our target audience will be different, okay? We'll have different categories. So align these two and then come up with a content plan which defines what will be done, when will it be done, who is going to be doing it, how many times does it need to be updated, at what frequency is basically like how many times it's going to be updated. So you need to understand all of your questions like what, when, why, and how, and by whom. In a more detailed manner, I've divided this into 3 parts. Okay, it's basically pre-production, that's like simple planning. Then the production, when you actually get into the execution and implementation phase. After you have actually provided the content, what is it that you need to do, right? That's post-production. So very quickly, you need to research who your users are, what kind of content do you need, and who your competitors are. It's extremely important. It's something that we've just bothered to know a little bit, but we haven't delved into that too much. How does that come and affect us? Because when I am providing my content in such a wide array of media, okay, I have no control of who is going to come and visit how many times and when. I do not have control over that. And if my competitor's interface is proving to be much better, usable, searchable, faster, it's going to reflect very badly on us. And this is not cheap. It's extremely expensive for an organization to go in for content strategy. As content strategists, we may not get very well paid in that respect. The proportion of investment that an organization needs to make versus what a content strategist will make out of that, that is huge amount of a difference. But that does not mean that we can be isolated from that. We have to be aware of it. There are like lots of SEO tools which are available. We need to familiarize ourselves with those. We have to understand what one tool offers over the other, how much it's going to cost, what is our organization's need, how much can we really spend in that area, what kind of data will that bring us, and what will we do with that data. So all of that we have to understand. Then there is a lot of data sources that are already available for us, and ideally speaking, we wouldn't want to rewrite content. We would like to reuse that content. So how do we make sure that the required content is meta tagged in the right fashion, so I can quickly put together pieces by selecting one particular meta tag and produce something which is required for one kind of audience base. We have to start thinking in terms of content provision as opposed to simple content creation. And the faster that you are able to provide, the faster you are able to respond to your customer needs, the faster you will be able to earn money out of them. The editorial strategy is something that we had a lot of control over, because there were only so many limited number of media that we were providing the content through. Now it's going to be managed by a whole set of teams, okay? But everyone needs to realize that it is one company, one organization, one product. It has to say the same thing. We cannot have jarring, weak and soft and aggressive content speaks. We have to have one voice, and that voice has to be decided with a lot of thought. You can't decide once and then realize that it's not working. You have to understand what kind of audience you have, what kind of customers you have, and speak to them in that manner. So this is where a lot of information can come in through from your marketing and your customer facing teams. What is it that they go and do now and you will need to do through your content in future? The management, the information architecture part of it, the metadata, the site creation, what kind of structures we are going to have. I wouldn't say that a lot of investment needs to be done by the content providers or the content strategists in terms of deciding the the client server interaction or the the database balancing and load and all those kind of things. We can afford to leave that part still with our IT teams, but we still have to work in close in a very close manner with them, because they need to know why we need one particular server to respond fast.